until at the very last moment. And so it is officially 5, and we are so glad that you are here. Thanks for coming tonight. If you're visiting with us, and I know we have a few visitors, thank you for coming our way. We're always delighted when we have guests. We hope that you're encouraged by your time with us as we work our way through the book of Revelation. Before we do that, as we always do, we have a song that we sing. We always started off with a song here on Sunday night. We're going to do that tonight. Tonight our song leader is Jonathan Beard. You haven't heard Jonathan before. He and Kathleen are new here with their little boy Walter, and so Jonathan's going to lead us tonight. And so Jonathan, why don't you come up here and lead us in a song?
If you prefer to use a book, will be number 390. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Bear me through the swelling current, and me safe on Canaan's side. Songs of praises I will ever give to thee. Songs of praises I will ever give to thee.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. And as we continue to see here at Concord Road, when it comes to song leaders, we have an embarrassment of riches. We just have so many great ones, and we just keep adding to that. Well, like I said, we are glad that you're here as we continue our study through the book of Revelation. And if you've got your Bibles with you, Revelation chapter 5 is where you want to be. Revelation chapter 5. Again, I appreciate those who filled in my absence this week, and that meant Gary last Sunday night. Thank you, Gary, for filling in. I know I saw him somewhere tonight, so I know he's around, and I really appreciate him. He always does a great, great job. Okay, Revelation chapter 5. And I normally would say to folks who are tuning in, thank you for tuning in online, but we're not able to stream tonight. And so, but it is being recorded, and so for our friends who are following the Revelation series online, they'll be able to get online and then look at it. But we're having some issues tonight and not able to stream, unfortunately. Okay, let's jump right into it. I'm not going to take time to go back to Revelation in chapter 4, but Revelation chapter 4 and 5 go together. The two parts of this single magnificent vision of God's glory. And so if you haven't had an opportunity to follow us through, we are good. We are streaming. Folks, thanks for tuning in if you're streaming with us. I just told everybody here we weren't streaming tonight, but we got that issue fixed, and we are so glad that you are tuning in and able to join us tonight as we look at Revelation chapter 5. As I just said, Revelation chapter 4 and 5 go together. Two parts of a single magnificent vision of God's glory. You might want to think of it, chapter 4 as Act 1 in John's vision of God's throne room, and here in Revelation chapter 5 is the second act of that vision. Now let's take a look. Let's read a few verses here in chapter 5, then we'll make some observations. It begins this way. I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book and to break its seals?" And no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the book or look into it. And one of the elders said to me, "Stop weeping. Behold, the Lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. And I saw between the throne, with the 4 living creatures and the elders, a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent into all the earth. And he came and he took the book out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and a golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song. Worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. Okay. So let's make, as I said, some observations here as we work through chapter 5. As the chapter begins, there in verse 1, John's attention is drawn to the right hand of the Father. And so he's sitting on the throne, and in his right hand there is this sealed scroll. Now, if you'll look real quick, if you'll just hold your place here in Revelation and turn over into the Old Testament to the book of Daniel for just a second, you're going to see something of a parallel here. As we try to understand what this sealed scroll really is all about, I think Daniel chapter 12 gives us some insight. In Daniel chapter 12, in verse 4, we read these words, "But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth and knowledge will increase. Seal up the book until the end of time." This implies keeping it safe until it's needed. So when we look at Daniel chapter 12 there, and we kind of compare it here, it's most likely that what this scroll is, it is God's plan for history. That's what it contains. His plan for the world, his destiny for the world, and there's really 2 things about it. And those 2 things, it says, it was full of writing on both sides. The front was full of writing, and the back side was full of writing. And then the second thing is, it's sealed with 7 seals. Now, the writing on both sides suggests that the scroll is completely filled in. In other words, that God's plan for the world has all the details. God has his plan. His plan is thorough. He knows it. It is determined. And the fact that the 7 seals seal this document means that it's not yet carried out. His full plan for humanity is not complete yet. And to break open the seals and to open the scroll means that God's word and God's will and God's plan is going to be accomplished. And so that's where John's attention is first drawn to. God is holding this scroll. It's full of writing, and it's sealed with these 7 seals. And now there in verse 2, suddenly in verse 2, this strong angel shouts loudly. In fact, so loud that the whole universe hears it. That's the implication of verse 3, because it says no one in the universe is able to open it. And so the idea is that this great resounding shout goes throughout all of the universe, and so that every creature can hear. Who is worthy to open the book? Who is worthy to break the seals of the book? And there is no one. No one can do it. No one can open the seals. No one can open the scroll. No one in the entire universe has the power to carry out God's plan. There is no one. No matter how great they are, there is no archangel who can carry out the plan. There is no great servant of God, Moses, David, Elijah, Paul. Nobody can carry out the plan of God. There is literally no one in all of the universe. Well, as a result of that, John begins to cry. He begins to weep, the text says. And you can understand, because if the scroll's not open, then there's no hope. There's no protection for God's people. There's no vindication for God's people. They're going to continue to be persecuted. They're going to continue to suffer. They're going to continue to be opposed. And there is no hope for anything better. There's not going to be any divine judgment on God's enemies. There's not going to be any ultimate victory for God's people. There's not going to be a new heavens and a new earth. There's not going to be a future inheritance. There's not going to be anything. And so John cries. It's a cry of hopelessness. And so as you look at these first 3 verses, and if you just were to stop there, it's just depressing. Here's the plan. Here's the answer. Who can accomplish it? Nobody. But the call's gone out throughout the universe. Who can do this? No one. No one can. But then we come there to verse 5. And one of the elders says to John, suddenly, stop crying. You don't have to cry anymore. Stop grieving, because that's what he was doing. He was full of grief. Stop grieving, because there is one who can break the seals. There is one who can unroll the scroll, who can open the book. And it is the Lion of Judah, and it is the root of David. Now, when we talk about the Lion of Judah, it alludes to a prophecy that we see back in Genesis chapter 49. Turn over to Genesis chapter 49. In Genesis chapter 49, Jacob looks toward the future of his 12 sons. And as he looks toward the future of his 12 sons, look what he says beginning in verse 8 about Judah. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches. He lies down as a lion. And as a lion, who dares rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. And so he prophesies that the ruler is going to come from the tribe of Judah. And so he compares Judah to a lion, someone who is strong and someone who is fierce, someone who is going to be triumphant, so someone who is going to be fighting his enemies. That's the picture here. And then, of course, when we think about the root of David, turn over to the book of Isaiah. There are several passages that we can look at, but take a look at Isaiah chapter 11. The allusion here to the root of David is found here in Isaiah chapter 11. And if you'll look at verse 1, as the prophecy of the coming great servant who's going to change everything. Verse 1, then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. Look at verse 10. Then in that day the nations will resort to the root of Jesse, who will stand as a signal for the peoples, and his resting place will be glorious. And so the solution is this Lion of Judah, this one who is this Lion of Judah, this one who comes from the root of Jesse, as Isaiah foresees that God's Messiah is going to be a descendant of this great warrior King David. And so when John turns around though and looks, he sees something that he really doesn't, he probably didn't expect to see what he saw. He probably expected to see someone that was ferocious. I mean, you got the description there of a lion. Someone who is intimidating, someone who is powerful, someone who is strong, someone that anyone who would looked at them, they would naturally think, oh, this is the solution. When he turns around and looks, that's not what he sees. Take a look at what he sees. Look at verse 6. And I saw between the throne with the 4 living creatures and the elders a lamb. A lamb. Are any of you afraid of lambs? I hope not. There's nothing to be afraid of with a lamb. This week was pretty cool. Leola and I were, most of you know, we went out to one of our favorite places, the Grand Canyon, and it's spring. And so 2 or 3 times we were able to see the little lambs of bighorn sheep. Just these little lambs jumping on rocks. I mean, they probably weren't a week up. They were probably a few days old, and they're scampering up the rocks. No one was afraid. Everybody wanted to get their hands on them.